Grace and peace. This is Brother D with devotedtoyah.com, devoted to Yah YouTube, devoted to Yah Facebook, devoted to Yah at gmail.com. We're going to talk about Hebrews chapter 12, verse 18 to 29. If you're watching this video, it's because you're actually interested in this topic, or somebody that loves you is sharing this video with you because you believe that Hebrews chapter 12 verses 18 to 29 is proof that the law has been done away with. So I hope that you take the time to watch the whole video through and then either discuss this with the person that shared this video with you, or you can discuss directly with me, Brother D, at devotedtoyah at gmail.com. devotedtoyah@gmail.com. Hebrews chapter 12 verses 18 to 29. For you have not come to a mountain that might be touched, and that burned with fire, and to blackness, darkness, storm, the sound of a trumpet, and the voice of words which those who heard it begged that not one more word should be spoken to them. For they could not stand that which was commanded. Quote, if even an animal touches the mountain, it shall be stoned. So far, nothing here is saying that the law has been abolished. However, the words given for the law is being spoken of here. Simply, all that's being said is that when the law was given, it was a terrifying moment, which should cause one to fear Yahuwah, which is the Hebrew name for the Creator, and in your Bibles it will say the Lord. I will be saying Yahuwah because I'm convicted that that is his name. So it is a terrifying moment which should cause one to fear Yahuwah the Creator and tremble at his word. Nothing here is saying that those words of the law are nailed to the cross and done away with. Hopefully we can agree so far. Let's continue. Verse 21. So fearful was the appearance that Moses said, I am terrified and trembling. But you have come to the Mount Zion and to the city of the living Elohim. Elohim, I will say for God. You'll see in your scriptures. God in the Hebrew is Elohim. But you have come to Mount Zion and to the city of the living Elohim, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to innumerable multitudes of angels, to the festal gathering and assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, to Yahuwah or Elohim, the judge of all, to the spirits of just men made perfect, to Yahusha, which is the Hebrew word for the name Jesus. Yahusha, the mediator of a new covenant, and the blood of sprinkling that speaks better than that of Abel. Let's discuss this. And that was verse 24. Here, Hebrews is simply communicating that the location of where you have come to is different. It is metaphoric language, of course, but nothing is saying the law has been nailed to the cross and abolished. Moses did not die for anyone's sins, although he stood in the gap many times and helped lessen Yahuwah's wrath upon rebellious Israel. He was the mediator. He was the go-to man. But what the Messiah has done is better. Messiah died for us and has become high priest in the true tabernacle, Zion, Jerusalem, which is in heaven, which we have obedient and faithful ones, which we obedient and faithful ones have access to. Those who are obedient and faithful to him have access to that true tabernacle. Let's continue. Hebrews 12:25. See that you don't refuse him who speaks. For if they didn't escape when they refused him who warned on the earth, talking about the Israelites in the wilderness during the times of Moses when the mountain was trembling and smoke and fire. Even the Israelites didn't escape when they refused him who warned on the earth. How much more will we not escape who turn away from him who warns from heaven? Guys, so far what we're seeing here is a terrifying, dreadful truth. As terrifying and dreadful it was, even Moses himself was terrified. And he was the messenger. He was the chosen one. He was safe. Even he was terrified. The apostle is saying right here that how much more should we? How much more should we? How much more will we not escape who turn away from him who warns from heaven? If we turn away from him who warns from heaven, who is him who warns from heaven? Yahusha, the Messiah, the one you call Jesus. Moses was the one who warned from earth. Yahusha is the one who warns from heaven. We're going to get more into this. Verse 26, whose voice shook the earth then, but now he has promised, saying, yet once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens. Very, very important that you don't miss this. I'm going to read 25 and 26 together. See that you don't refuse him who speaks. For if they didn't escape when they refused him who warned on the earth, how much more will we not escape who turn away from him who warns from heaven, whose voice shook the earth then, but now he has promised, saying, yet once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens. If I'm reading this correctly, you tell me if I'm wrong. This is saying that although Moses was the human being that was speaking to the Israelites on the earth, it was still the Messiah that was being spoken. I will explain this. John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. Verse 14. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. The Word of the Creator is the Messiah. He pre-existed before he was a human. Every word that came from the Father's mouth is the Messiah. So essentially, the same word was being preached back then as the word that is being preached right now. The only difference is that that word has been made manifest in the flesh. That is the difference. You read 25 and 26 together. Regardless, if you don't see it that way, Yahusha, the one who warns from heaven, because he's seated in heaven right now, he's seated at the right hand of the Father in the order of Melchizedek, right? He's our priest, he's our mediator. So he's the one that's warning from heaven, who shook the earth then, but now he has promised, saying, yet once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens. This is a terrifying thought. And we wonder why he's going to come back with fire in his eyes. This is so essential not to ignore and brush over. Hebrews is saying, see to it that you don't ignore the message given through Yahuwah, Elohim, God. Regardless of whether it is called the law of Moses or what you know as the new covenant, the author and speaker is Yahuwah. Not Moses, not Paul. If the consequence for ignoring Moses was big, how much bigger will the consequence be for you who ignore this word, who are given another opportunity to obey? Nothing here states that the message has been done away with. Rather, it seems like it is transferred over. The same message is being transferred over and delivered by a different person directly, but it's the same message. The earthly messengers may have changed. Moses versus the Messiah made flesh. But the heavenly messenger has remained the same, and so has the message. Then he shook the earth. Next he will shake the heavens and the earth. Be afraid. Be very, very afraid for rejecting this message. Let us continue through Hebrews chapter 12. Verse 27. This phrase, quote, yet once more, end quote, signifies the removing of those things that are shaken, as of things that have been made, that things which are not shaken may remain. I'm going to say that again. The phrase, yet once more, signifies the removing of those things that are shaken, as of things that have been made, that things which are not shaken may remain. Once more means this is your last chance. This is your last opportunity. Heaven and earth will pass away. Heaven and earth has not passed away yet. All the judgments written in the book of Revelation and rebellious in the book of Revelation and the rebellious who are resurrected will encounter the wrath of Yahuwah for disobeying his word. I am implying right now that his word includes the law of Moses. In case you haven't been getting that message yet, I want you to understand where I'm coming from. By the way, the definition of the word law, by definition, simply means instruction in its simplest term. The law is the word of Yahuwah, of Elohim, the Creator. You can't change that. Let us continue. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 28. Therefore, receiving a kingdom that can't be shaken, let's have grace, through which we serve Elohim acceptably with reverence and awe. For our Elohim is a consuming fire. I didn't see any proof in these verses that the law has been done away with, nailed to the cross, abolished, no more applicable. What I do see, however, is that if you don't obey and receive the word, law, message of the Creator, be afraid, for he is a consuming fire. That's what I see. Let me throw my ending scriptures here that I've been throwing on every video that I've been making to rebuttal all of these verses that are brought forth from Paul, predominantly from Paul, to impose the idea that the law has been done away with. Let us go to a few passages here. I'm going to begin with the Old Testament and go to Deuteronomy chapter 30. Starting at verse 10. If you will obey Yahuwah, your Elohim's voice. Matter of fact, I'm going to go back a little bit more. Let's start from verse 1. It shall happen when all these things have come on you, the blessing and the curse, which I have set before you, and you shall call them to mind among all the nations where Yahuwah your Elohim has driven you, and return to Yahuwah your Elohim, and obey his voice according to all that I command you today, you and your children, with all your heart, with all your soul, that then Yahuwah your Elohim will release you from captivity, have compassion on you, and will return and gather you from all the peoples where Yahuwah your Elohim has scattered you. If your outcasts are in the uttermost parts of the heavens, from there Yahuwah your Elohim will gather you, and from there he will bring you back. You're probably thinking, that's for the Israelites, that doesn't apply to me. Hold that thought. I will answer that question with scripture. But let's suppose that this is applying to the Creator's chosen people, which includes everyone that believes in him. Let's just stay with me for a little bit. Verse 5, Yahuwah your Elohim will bring you into the land which your fathers possessed, and you will possess it. He will do you good and increase your numbers more than your fathers. Yahuwah your Elohim will circumcise your heart. Circumcision of the heart is in the Old Testament, the Tanakh, the Pentateuch. It is not just a New Testament theme. And the heart of your offspring, that means your children, to love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul, that you may live. You want to live, right? Yahuwah your Elohim will put all these curses on your enemies and those who hate you, who persecute you. You shall return and obey Yahuwah's voice and do all his commandments which I command you today. Yahuwah your Elohim will make you prosperous in all the work of your hand, in the fruit of your body, in the fruit of your livestock, in the fruit of your ground, for good. For Yahuwah will again rejoice over you for good, as he rejoiced over your fathers. I don't see all the true believers around the world prospering 100%. I don't see it. They might be prospering spiritually, but they're not prospering economically. So these promises have not come to pass yet. If you will obey Yahuwah your Elohim's voice to keep his commandments and his statutes which are written in this book. It does not say which are written on the tablets only, which many believe and many preach, that only the 10 Commandments need to be kept, except for the Sabbath. No, it says, if you will obey Yahuwah your Elohim's voice. We were talking about the voice, right, of the Creator in Hebrews chapter 12. This is his voice. This is the Messiah. This is the Word. This is the living Word. This is the bread of life. This is the fountains from heaven. Fountains of living water. This is the delight. This is the manna. This is the water that came out of the rock in the wilderness. This is it right here. This is the fruit from the tree of life. If you turn to Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul, that is the condition. The blessings will come. Verse 11 of Deuteronomy 30. For this commandment which I command you today is not too difficult for you. It doesn't get any more clear than this. This is the Creator speaking. He was not lying. He was not being a cruel creator, saying something that's not true and teasing us. Saying that keeping his commandments is not difficult, but later on say it was too difficult, and he actually punished people for not keeping the commandments. That's cruel. Don't you think that's cruel? Would you do that to your children? Would you give your child commandments and instructions and rules in your house that you know are impossible to attain, but you tell your child, this is easy, you can do it, and then you spank them and you punish them and put them in timeout because they didn't obey your rules? Would you do that to your children? If you wouldn't do that to your children, why would you think the Creator would do that to his children? The law of Moses is not difficult. Matter of fact, I think the law of Moses is easier than, well, I'll say the parts that Christianity has ignored. The parts of the law of Moses that Christianity has ignored is so easy compared to the good things that the Christian church has focused on. Not every Christian church, but the good Christian churches actually focus on repenting from sexual immorality, idolatry, drunkenness, murder, loving the widow, the orphan. All those things are fantastic. Fantastic. Okay? A lot of sacrifice there, a lot of love. But the parts you're ignoring are a weekly vacation called the Sabbath. That's not difficult. The only difficult thing about it is because we live in Babylon, you might have a job where they require you to work on Saturdays. Yes, that requires sacrifice, and that is difficult. Other than that, it's a day of rest, for goodness sake. You're obligated to take a weekly vacation. What is wrong with that? Anyway, I'm going on a tangent. I'm sorry. The point is, Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 11. For this commandment which I command you today is not too hard for you or too distant. Verse 12. It is not in heaven that you should say, who will go up for us to heaven to bring it to us and proclaim it to us, that we may do it. Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who will go over to the sea for us, bring it to us, and proclaim it to us, that we may do it. But the word is very near to you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it. Behold, I have set before you today life and prosperity, death and evil. You see Paul's letters that says the law was a burden, it was a yoke. And you think it was impossible for our fathers, even our fathers couldn't bear. I'm going to get into all this. Not in this video, but I'm going to get into that in another video, the book of Acts. You see Paul saying that. But what you're missing is that Paul is only explaining one of the aspects of the law of Moses. The law of Moses brings life and prosperity, death and evil. It brings life and prosperity if you obey and mix it with faith. And it brings death and evil if you disobey. It's just that simple. Verse 16, for I command you today to love Yahuwah your Elohim, to walk in his ways, to keep his commandments, his statutes, and his ordinances, that you may live and multiply, and that Yahuwah your Elohim may bless you in the land where you are going to possess. Yahusha the Messiah is the living word, and we need to obey him. This very passage Paul quotes in the book of Romans. It's fascinating. Romans chapter 10. Should know these by heart by now. Romans chapter 10, starting at verse 5, it says, for Moses writes about the righteousness of the law. The one who does them will live by them. There is a righteousness that comes from obeying the law. There is value in that. It is honored. It is honored as righteousness. However, verse 6, but the righteousness which is of faith. So there's another kind of righteousness which comes by faith. Says this. Now he's going to quote Deuteronomy chapter 30. Do not say in your heart, who will ascend into heaven? And in parentheses it will say, that is to bring the Messiah down. Paul is being a commentary for you. He is explaining who the Messiah is, who the Messiah was. Back then in Deuteronomy chapter 30 it says the word, to bring the word down. Here Paul is saying it's Messiah. That's very powerful. Verse 7, or who will descend into the abyss or to the deep? That is to bring the Messiah up from the dead. But what does it say? The word is near you, in your mouth and in your heart. That is the word of faith which we are preaching. That if you will confess with your mouth that Yahusha is the Master or the Lord, and believe in your heart that Elohim has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Shaul, Paul, is emphasizing faith in all of his books. He is not doing away with the law. He is not doing away with it. I'm trying to show you this. The same message that Paul was preaching is the same message that was preached in the wilderness. Obey my commandments. Obey. Love me with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. This is not too difficult for you. I'm going to give you my spirit so you can obey it. I'm going to give you my spirit to dwell inside of you and to give you strength. The Messiah is going to dwell in you. The Creator is going to dwell inside of you to give you strength to obey his commandments. He's going to... Let's go. Let's go there. Jeremiah 31. What is the new covenant? What is it anyways? The only passage in the scriptures, in the Tanakh, in the Pentateuch, in the Old Testament, that addresses what the new covenant will actually be precisely, exactly, is this. Jeremiah 31:31 to 33. Behold, the days come, says Yahuwah, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Remember I asked you earlier if you were saying to yourself, oh, this doesn't apply to me, this applies to Israel. In Deuteronomy 30, I'm a Christian. I'm not an Israelite. I'm not a Jew. So far, what we're seeing in Jeremiah 31 is that the new covenant is for the house of Israel and the house of Judah. You have to be part of those two. And they're really one. It's Israel. House of Israel represents the northern kingdom of Israel. House of Judah represents the southern kingdom of Judah. The southern kingdom of Israel. Okay? And they're dispersed all over the earth right now. Romans chapter 11 as well is essential to know that you need to be grafted into Israel. I'll get into that another time. Jeremiah 31. So he's going to establish a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, where I spoke through Moses and shook the mountain, fire and smoke, lightning and thunder, the ground opening up and killing people. Not like that. I'm not going to establish a covenant with them like that. Which covenant of mine they broke, although I was a husband to them, says Yahuwah. But this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yahuwah. I will put my law, my Torah, my statutes, my commandments, my ordinances in their heart. I will be their Elohim. It says, I will put it in their inward parts, and I will write it in their heart. Hebrews chapter 12. I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. Relationship. Hallelujah. This is repeated in Hebrews chapter 8, by the way. With all that being said, Romans chapter 11, by the way, I want you to read that. If you want to be a believer in Messiah, you have to embrace the law. You have to. You cannot separate the Messiah from the Word. He is the Word. He is the Word of the Creator. And the Word of the Creator spoke through Moses in the wilderness. All the commandments that are written in this book. I'm not going to read Romans 11. I want you to read Romans 11 for yourself. If you got any questions, ask the person that shared this video with you, or email me directly, devotedtoyah@gmail.com. We're going to end with 3 verses, 3 passages in the book of Matthew. If you haven't believed anything that I said so far, at least believe the words of the Messiah that you claim to believe in. Allow his words to triumph over everyone else's words. At least do this. Matthew chapter 28, starting at verse 18. Yahusha came to them and spoke to them, saying, All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them, immersing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the set-apart Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. Behold, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Verse 19 says, Go and make disciples of all nations. What does all nations mean? All nations. Chinese, Indians, Russian, Hispanics, Europeans, Americans, Native Indians, whatever you want to call it. All nations. Jew, Gentile alike, Israelite and Gentile. Go make disciples to all nations. Verse 20. What are we going to do with these people from all nations? What are we going to teach them? Verse 20. Teach them to observe all things that I have commanded you. What does all things I have commanded you mean? All things I have commanded you. That means every single commandment. You can't make disciples picking and choosing which commandments you want to choose from the Messiah. You can't do that. That's illegal. Now let's go to one of the commandments that gets looked over by Christianity, especially Christians that hold the theology that the law of Moses is no longer relevant or applicable to believers in the Messiah. Matthew 23, verses 1 to 3. Then Yahushua spoke to the multitudes and to his disciples, saying, The scribes and the Pharisees sat on Moses' seat. All things, therefore, whatsoever they tell you to observe, observe and do. But don't do their works, for they say and don't do. Look at any commentary you want, any dictionary, Wikipedia, whatever you want. Look up the seat of Moses. That's in verse 2. The seat of Moses. Do some research on that. You will find that that is a place where these teachers sat and recited and taught the law of Moses. Verse 3. All things. Here we go again. Didn't the Messiah said, teach them all things that I've commanded you? Here we go. Verse 3. All things, therefore, whatever they tell you to observe, in context of the fact that they should be teaching the law of Moses and nothing more, nothing less. Observe and do. Do what they tell you. Yahushua just commanded his disciples and a multitude of people to obey the law of Moses. This is one of his commandments that he gave before he left the planet. Are you making disciples, teaching them to obey the law of Moses? Or are you making disciples, teaching them that the law of Moses has been abolished and nailed to the cross? The last part of verse 3 does not say that the law of Moses is done away with. The last part of verse 3 says, but don't do their works, for they say and don't do. They're hypocrites. All throughout the gospel letters, you will see that the Pharisees added to the law of Moses. They added to the scriptures. They added commandments. Those were the yokes. Those were the burdens. Okay? Now, I'll be honest. Another burden is requiring to keep the whole law of Moses perfectly without fail. Then you will be saved. That is impossible. And that is a doctrine that the Pharisees taught. And no man has ever kept the law of Moses perfectly except the Messiah. It's not the law of Moses that is a burden. It is a commandment and doctrine of man that is a burden. Please notice the difference. But if you, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, try your best to keep the law of Moses, even when you fail, if you repent and you turn and you cry out to the Creator, He will forgive you. But be terrified, just like we read in Hebrews 12. Because that grace might run out. I know in Christianity you teach unconditional grace and unconditional love, but this is conditional. Hebrews 12 was conditional. There's a condition. If the Israelites disobeyed and look at their consequence, how much worse is your consequence going to be if you don't obey now that you have the Messiah living in you? I can do all things through the Messiah who strengthens me. Greater is he who is in me than he who is in the world. Shame on us if we can't get it right after we've been given better promises than what the Israelites had in the wilderness. Think about it. I'm going to end with one more verse. Matthew chapter 5, 17. The Messiah says, "Think not that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I didn't come to destroy, but to fulfill." In other words, the word fulfill cannot mean the same thing or anything even close to destroy. They're completely opposite words. So you can't twist it and try to manipulate the word fulfilled to mean somehow it's still, I've heard it this way. He fulfilled all the commandments, so now we don't have to fulfill them anymore. Because they're fulfilled in him and he dwells in us. So we're already fulfilling them because he's inside of us. So we're automatically fulfilling them without fulfilling them. It's so confusing. That's not sound at all. It's not sound at all. He did not come to destroy those words. The next verse, in verse 18, says, "For most certainly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away," heaven and earth has not passed away yet, "not even the one smallest letter or one pen stroke shall in any way pass from the law until all things be fulfilled." Now, even if that's the paper and the tablets of stone, even if they have rotted away by now and man had to copy a copy of a copy and man has added words here and there, the Spirit, the words that were spoken, the words that are spoken, the words that were spoken, are being spoken and will continue to be spoken from the law of Moses is still relevant. It is still alive. It is vibrant. It is not done away with until heaven and earth pass away. I'm going to end with that. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'll see you on the next one. Shalom, grace and peace.